Hi, my name is Ufuoma, and I'm bringing you knowledge and insights on the new standard of building. Today, we're at Ark Insurance, and we're going to be discussing property insurance, the risks of not having property insurance, and what you need to know when you are getting a policy. I'm seated with Mrs. Folake Adedamola, and she's going to be taking us through everything that you need to know about property insurance. Mrs. Folake, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, can you give us an introduction of yourself and what you do at Ark Insurance?
Okay, you've introduced me a bit. What I will add is I'm an insurance broker. I'm a professional insurance broker. I've been an insurance broker for over 20 years, and my experience cuts across all classes of insurance: energy, oil and gas, property insurance, employees benefits, that is life, accident and death, and basically all classes of insurance.
All right, ma'am. Okay, so I guess this is going to be a very insightful session.
Yes,
All right.
it was.
So, let's start with what is insurance in general?
I will try as much as possible not to use a lot of our jargons so that people watching or listening to us can benefit a lot from this. So, say insurance as a promise. I know that popularly insurance is a risk transfer mechanism. This is what people understand it to be. But I love to explain it as a promise from one party to another party. So it's a promise by an insurance company to step in should a defined event occur. You know, that is, the promise is given by the insurance company to the insured that if the stated event or pre-agreed event occur, they will come in to compensate, or like we put it, to indemnify the insured. So what I mean is, you as the insured, you pay a small amount of money called premium, small amount relative to the value of what you are insuring. So you pay the premium to the insurer, and the insurer, in exchange for that, promises you that should a defined event happen to what you have insured, they will step in to compensate you and take you back to the position you were immediately before that incident. For instance, talking about property insurance, you pay a premium to insure your property, and the insurance company promises you that should events such as fire damage to the building, flood damage, or storm causing a damage to the building, they will step in to help you to reinstate that building, to the state where it was before that incident happened.
See. Okay, so when we're talking about possible incidents that could occur, how do you determine what kind of incident to insure against?
Shall we limit this to property insurance?
Yes.
So for property insurance, basically we are talking about buildings and contents. Buildings, contents, then plants and machineries attached to the building. Some buildings have elevators, for instance. So that's an example of plant and machinery, generators, and basically the console. We are talking about the building, the structure itself, the contents and plants, right? We know that buildings are exposed to some perils such as fire, such as storm. In the event of a heavy rain, there could be a storm damage to roof or other parts of the building. There could be theft, either theft by owners' employees or theft by outsiders, which is popularly known as burglary. So there could be bushfire, fire from nearby facilities or even from bushes. So there could be damage from aerial devices. I mean, we've seen a situation whereby a plane crashed into a building. That is an example of risk. So what we advise is that look around you, look at where your property is situated, and try to define or streamline the kind of exposures or the kind of perils your property is exposed to. Then that will give you a good insight into what the scope of the insurance you should get. Like I always say, insurance could be as comprehensive as you are willing to pay for it, where the situation of your building, and the occupancy, the nature of the building, the use of the building will help you to determine the kind of perils. And of course, aside from the building too, there is also the liability aspect. For instance, a visitor could come into the building and maybe the floor is wet and slippery and there is no notice, to alert the visitor that the floor is slippery. If such visitor, sleeps and breaks a leg, that is a liability on the owner. So that is something an occupier's liability will be covered. And that is required by law. So when it comes to property insurance, we should look at the property damage itself, damage to the property itself, and we should also consider the liability of the occupants, to outsiders.
I see. Okay, so what does the law say about property insurance? So how much are property owners required to get insurance?
Last year, we got a new law. So before that time, we were operating based on the Insurance Act of 2003. But last year, a new Insurance Act came into light. It's popularly called NIRA, as Nigerian Insurance Industry Act 2025. And it stipulates that buildings of more than one floor must be insured. So that we call it insurance of public buildings. So any building occupied by tenants, hostels, that are buildings that are more than one floor must be insured against fire, collapse, and such perils. And also, like I said before, the liability aspects as well must be insured. So that is what the law says. Now, to what extent should you insure? When it comes to property insurance in general, you must insure the actual value of that property, the full actual value of the property. Now, the law says that insure the building. The law does not make it mandatory to insure your content. But we always advise that please insure your content as well, because your content are also exposed to certain perils, like I mentioned before. And of course, the plants and machineries as well.
Awesome. Okay. So, what are some types of insurance that property owners should consider?
Depending on the type of property and the nature of business that is taking place in the property, generally, I would say that you should have fire and special perils. In fact, that is the minimum. We call it fire and special perils. Now, you can take it higher or further by making it a property or risk insurance. Now, the difference between that is for fire and special perils, the insured perils are listed on the policy. Where you open the policy, you see all the perils. You see the perils of fire, you see the perils of storm, flood, damage as a result of area devices, earthquake, shock as a result of earthquake. It doesn't happen around here, but it's part of the special perils and the likes. In fact, it can include damage as a result of riots and civil commotion. And you can even extend it to include political violence and war. So, like I said, it depends on how much you're willing to pay for. Insurance can be as comprehensive as you're willing to pay for it, like I said before. So the minimum is fire and special perils, but you can make it comprehensive by making it an all risk. So I was explaining the difference between a standard fire and special perils and an all risk. So for an all risk insurance, everything is covered. That is damage to the building as a result of all perils, is covered, except those perils specifically excluded in the policy. So let me try to break it down. For a standard fire and special perils policy, you see each peril stated. Like you will see fire, then the fire will be explained. The exclusions will be stated under fire. Then you will see flood, storm, like that. So each of the perils that are insured against are specifically stated on the standard fire and special perils. But for a property or risk insurance, The perils are not specifically stated. So which means any sort of damage is covered except those ones that are specifically excluded by the policy. So you see the policy stating specific exclusions. So they are right there. So very clear. So one is more comprehensive than the other. The property always insurance is more comprehensive than just the standard fire and special perils insurance. But the premium, so it's the same way. The premium too is different.
So do property owners, developers, and tenants look at insurance the same way?
Well, that is a good question, but let me start this way. Generally, people tend to see insurance the same. When I mean people, I mean the general public. So the way they see insurance is, oh, I'm paying for something that may never happen.
Yeah.
But I try to tell people that it is the same way you get security. I mean, when you own a nice building, no matter the neighborhood, you try to get security. Does it mean that you are going to be burgled? You may or may not be burgled, but you are trying to protect yourself in case of or against possible adverse events, right? That is the same way insurance works. Yes, you pay the premium. The event you have insured may or may not happen. But wouldn't you rather pay and the event does not happen than not pay and the event happens? Our advice for all these three is to see insurance on the one hand the same way and on the other hand differently. What do I mean by that? The same way that as it's a protection against possible adverse effects. That is the way everybody should see insurance. It's an investment. It's yes, the investment may not yield immediately to you personally, but see it as it's helping someone else somewhere, and see it as giving you a peace of mind, and see it as protecting you should an adverse event occur. That is the way everyone should see insurance. It's a must, and see it as also fulfilling the law for the compulsory insurance classes. So, which includes property insurance now and the liability. But they should also see it differently because in the last scheme of things, each of these people are sort of protecting interests that are not too similar. What do I mean by that? Let's start from a tenant. A tenant does not really have a direct stake in the property. So the tenant is just renting the property. And for us insurance practitioners now, we see tenants as having what we call insurable interest in the property. Because if the property damage, see, as a tenant, if I come to you to rent your property, I've paid you the rent upfront. So if there is a damage to that property, it's going to affect me. Though I do not own the property, I still have a stake in it somehow because I'm going to be affected. Aside from the fact that I've paid rent, it may now cost me to look for an alternative accommodation. You understand? So, but when it comes to the actual value of the property, a tenant doesn't really have a stake because the tenant is not the owner, right? So, what tenants should mostly focus on are their own contents. Of course, the tenant should ensure that the landlord insures that property and insures it properly as a property that is being occupied by a tenant. You understand? Yeah. So once that is done, then the tenant can now concentrate on insuring their own personal assets.
Inside all the
So which can be insured under a householder's insurance policy, for instance. So they can insure all of their contents, clothing, appliances, whatever, even mobile devices, your phones, your jewelries, your wristwatches, your laptops, all of this can be insured under householders insurance. So for a tenant, the primary focus is their content, although they themselves have obligations under the property insurance. You know, when you buy an insurance, there are times, there are conditions. So the conditions mustn't be breached. For instance, for the tenants, they must use the house well and act as though there is no insurance on that house. E.g., don't put your gas cylinder inside the building. Create a space for it outside. You understand? So that is one of the obligations of the tenant. So for a tenant, make sure that you fulfill the obligations and focus on ensuring your contents. Right. For property owners, like I said before, they own the property. So should there be a damage, they suffer direct loss, right? So their own focus is to ensure that they insure the property. And lest I forget, for the tenant too, they should insure their personal liability or occupier's liability. So their contents, their liability. Let's say that a tenant occupies the entire building. So the liability to legal liability to third parties, like I explained before, somebody comes in, gets injured as a result of the negligence of anyone within this, maybe an employee, that is a direct liability on the tenant, right? So the tenant should focus on the liability too. So their contents, their liability. Now we move to the property owner. So the property owner themselves must ensure that the building is fully insured. Like I said before, ensure that you have insured an amount that is enough to put the building back to its state, the state it was before, immediately before the loss, in the event of a total loss. You understand? So for the owner, protect your investment. Your building is your investment. So protect your investment, buy property insurance, and ensure that there is a liability insurance in place too. So since if the owner is not the one occupying, ensure that there is an occupier's liability in place. But if the owner is the one occupying, then the owner now needs to insure the property, insure their contents, and the liability as well. For the developer, that is a little bit different because the developer also, the risk developer faces starts from construction, right? So while constructing, there is a compulsory insurance too, which is called builder's liability. It is a form of third-party liability insurance too. So while the construction is ongoing, if there is damage to another person's property or there is injury or death to a third party, that builder's liability insurance will step in to pay whatever damages have been awarded against the developer. So lawfully or legally or statutorily, the developer must have a builder's liability insurance during the construction phase. So aside from that, that is on the legal aspect, on the compulsory aspect. But we also recommend that the building under construction itself is insured.
So even before it's finished?
Even before it's finished, because there is the risk of collapse, there is the risk of fire. You understand? Also, that is for the project itself, for the building itself. There is also other risk attached. There is risk to the workers on site. So there is an accident and disability insurance that can be bought to protect the workers on site. So in the event of injury or in the event of death as a result of an accident, then that insurance will compensate such worker. And so that is during construction. Of course, the liability is there too. The builder's liability, the project itself, while under construction, can be insured against, and the employees too. You know, accident on site could affect the employees. So that is for the construction phase. Then we have the post-construction phase, when the building is ready. So until handover, the developer is still responsible for the building, right? Under the construction all risk insurance, that is what we call it for the construction phase. So the construction all risk insurance itself can be as comprehensive as required. So under the construction all risk, you have the property itself and other extensions being insured, and third-party liability, and of course, the workers, like I mentioned before. So there is what we call a maintenance period. So there could be, it depending on how large the construction project is. So the maintenance period could be anywhere between 1 and 12 months. That is immediately after construction. So if any issues are noticed that are covered under the insurance, then the insurance steps in to pay for the rectification. But we also know that some developers own the property until they are able to sell. So they build to sell. Since they build to sell, after the completion, while they are awaiting the sale of the property, they need to have the property insured too, as we explained earlier. So before the property is transferred to the buyers, the developer is the owner, right? Yes. So, and they may suffer losses in the event of perils such as fire or storm or collapse and the likes. So they should insure the property. So the developer is protecting himself against financial losses and against possible legal liabilities, right? So the owner is also protecting himself. The owner of the property should protect himself against financial losses too, devastating financial losses and liability as well, possible liability. And the tenant too is protecting himself against financial losses. It may not be in the same scale, but then these losses are relative, right? Losses that may be big to me may be a small one to you. So for a tenant, I mean, it is always good. Whatever will cost you substantial sum of money to replace, please insure.
Thank you. You're welcome. So can we look at the cost of property insurance relative to the value of the property?
Trust me, it is negligible. Yes, for a few years now, property insurance premium has been running on tariff. So there is what we call Professional Reinsurance Association of Nigeria. They have a tariff that sets the minimum premium for property insurance. So we go by that tariff. Of course, the premium will depend on certain factors like the value of the property, the nature of the use of the property, the situation of the property, to the location of the property. So these factors determine the cost, basically. So, but trust me, very, very negligible compared to what is at stake. Yeah.
Right. I think most people don't trust insurance because of some of the stories that they've heard. Right. So even if it's not me personally, maybe I've heard of an uncle who tried to make a claim and he couldn't get it. Maybe the insurance company refused to pay. So what are some situations or some mistakes that people make when trying to get an insurance claim?
Okay, the fact of the matter is that when it comes to lack of trust in insurance in Nigeria, it's basically as a result of two factors. True pain points, like genuine pain points, and minimal awareness. I don't want to say lack of awareness. I'll say minimal awareness, right? So true pain points. A lot of people had actually gone through a lot. Like we say in the streets, I'm going through a lot of people have actually gone through a lot when it comes to insurance, to be honest. Some of them were as a result of their own negligence, and some of them as a result of, shall I say, defects in the industry. Let me put it that way. What do I mean by that? We've seen situations whereby agents, insurance companies have agents, that is people who sell insurance on their behalf. But then we know that by law, whatever your agent does is your responsibility, isn't it? So we've seen situations whereby agents sold insurance policy to an innocent person. and the agent sold the insurance policy as something else than what it should be. You understand? That is, and when there is a claim, when the person was ready to claim, there was nothing to claim. Let me give you an instance. There was a case some years back where an agent sold an insurance policy to someone. It was an investment-linked life insurance policy. And the agent did not explain to that person that once the person stopped paying contribution, all the contributions paid before would be forfeited. So this innocent man stopped paying at some point after paying for some years. So, and when he thought that his policy had matured, he asked for his money and there was nothing to be paid. So I would say that was a genuine pain point because it was something else that was sold to him. Also, there have been instances whereby an insurance company became insolvent and could not pay a genuine claim. So that is a true pain point that I will not fail to acknowledge. That had happened before. However, on the other side is the minimal awareness. A lot of people don't really understand what insurance is. A lot of people believe that, oh, insurance means I'm forfeiting my money. You know that there is something about a lot of us. We don't believe that something can happen to us until it actually happens close to home or until it actually happens. That is another thing. We are a people who believe in, by the grace of God, it won't happen. God forbid, it won't happen. Oh, the blood of Jesus, I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. Yeah, we are all covered by the blood of Jesus. We all believe that we are supernaturally covered, but being supernaturally covered does not preclude you from planning. So we actually focuses more on prayers than planning. But even God himself is a God of plans, right? So part of the plan is to try to educate yourself as much as possible about the usefulness of insurance for you. As far as I'm concerned, everybody has a need for insurance. So one major factor that I see in terms of awareness, aside from people not understanding, there is also people just running away with stories. Like I could come to you now and tell you, Ufuoma, see this XYZ insurance company, they refuse to pay my claim. All you heard is, oh, they refuse to pay Folake's claim, and you run with it. Yeah. Why did they refuse to pay Folake's claim? What did Folake do? Was there a breach by Folake? Nobody cares. Yeah. Now, that segues perfectly into my next point. Insurance is the business of law, terms and conditions. And you know that a lot of us don't read the blueprint. In fact, some people accuse us that, oh, they go out, they hide terms. We don't write terms in small print. We don't write in small print. I can show you copies of policy documents. They are never in small print. And they are in English. So, but how many of us actually read our policy documents?
They'll just say, you didn't tell me that part.
Let me give you an instance. A client has a property insurance that even includes burglary. Okay. And 2 people scaled the fence. It was a business premises. 2 people scaled the fence. They gained easy access into the premises, climbed a very tall tower, and stole thunder arrestors. But your policy says that there must be security. You said you had security in place. Where were the security guards?
So there was no security.
Do you understand? The security guards couldn't explain. So where were the security guards? Where were your security lights? So your insurance, when an insurance company sells you an insurance policy, there are terms and conditions. But there are people who believe that I have burglary insurance and have burglary insurance. It does not matter how the burglary happens. It does matter. It does matter how the incident happens. The fact that you have insurance does not mean that you have transferred all your responsibilities or obligations to the insurance company. What you have transferred is your risk. You still have obligations. For instance, I have householders insurance, right? House owners insurance. One of my obligations is to ensure that my apartment is properly locked.
Okay.
Do you understand? Now I leave my apartment open. Someone gains entry and steals things, and I'm saying insurance, come and pay. Do you get? Insurance company says, please keep your gas cylinder outside. You keep your gas cylinder inside the kitchen. There was an explosion and you are blaming it on insurance. Do you understand? So when you transfer your risk, please note that you have not transferred your responsibilities as well. You have responsibilities, you have obligations. Try to read your policy. But we understand that insurance may appear boring to a lot of people. That is why you have brokers. You understand? That is why you have brokers. So, for instance, we at Ark Insurance Brokers, we help you to interpret the policy. Firstly, we help you to get the right policy for you with the best terms possible. Then we help you to interpret the policy. We present to you a summary of the major terms and conditions. We try to educate you on what your obligations are, even when there is a yes, very important. So, and we hold your hands through the claims process as well. So try to engage a registered and qualified insurance broker. That will help you. Like I said before, a lot of people don't read. They don't bother to read their policy documents. They don't understand the terms. They don't care about the conditions. All they know is that I have fire insurance. Come and pay.
I've insured it too.
I've insured, exactly. And I do tell people that, see, when you buy fire insurance, what you have bought is not exactly damage to my property as a result of fire. What you have bought is damage to your property as a result of certain causes of fire.
Okay.
For instance, if you deliberately set your property on fire, it is fire, right? But no, insurance won't pay. For instance, if your property insurance is just a fire and specialist, standard fire and specialist, without what we call malicious damage, and someone maliciously damages your building, that will not be covered. People need to understand the scope of cover of their insurance. They need to understand the limitations as well. So when people understand the limitations, then they can decide to buy back some of the limitations. You know, I told you that your insurance can be as comprehensive as you want it to be. So you can now decide that, oh, some of these limitations in the name of exclusions can actually be bought, maybe covered under another policy or covered by an extension within the same policy. Or, no, I'm fine. I don't need the extensions. You understand? For instance, if you are living in a very secure location, you may not need something like malicious damage or riot. Do you understand? To be aware of even the risks that you yourself are exposed to, as well as understand your insurance, the scope of cover, your obligations, and the limitations of your policy. So lack of that is where the issue lies.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. What kind of support do people receive when they come to an insurance company?
I would say go to a professional and registered insurance broker.
What advice would you give anybody who wants to get property insurance?
My first advice, please choose a good professional and registered insurance broker. Your insurance broker is like your attorney. If you are in litigation and you are not a paid lawyer, you understand? Yeah. You are not learned like me. I'm unlearned when it comes to lobbying. You know, I'm not a lawyer. So if I were to be in litigation, I would look for a very good, qualified lawyer to represent me in court. So see your insurance broker as the one that represents you, that has your best interest at heart. So one of the major functions of an insurance broker is to advise you. And that is why insurance brokers are mandated by law to have a professional indemnity or professional liability insurance, so that if their client suffers a financial loss as a result of bad advice, the insurance will compensate that client. You understand? Oh, yes. Okay. So one of the primary roles is advisory, right? So choose a qualified insurance broker, a good one, to advise you on what exactly you need. So if you came to me that you wanted to insure your property, so I would tell you, of course, I would want to know everything about the property. Where is the property situated? What sort of property is it? What do you use it for? And a few other questions. Then I will now advise you on the most comprehensive insurance policy to take up. I understand that you don't want to waste money. At the same time, you don't want to be partially covered. So I would provide a balance between the coverage and the premium you are spending, right? In order to ensure that you are fully covered. And of course, and that the terms are right by you and you understand the terms. It will be my responsibility to educate you on the right insurance to buy and also educate you on the terms and conditions of your policy, what your responsibilities are, the limitations of the policy as well. And it will be my responsibility to hold your hands through the claims process. So my first advice is please go through a qualified insurance broker.
So when you're talking about holding their hand through the claims process, that brings us to the kind of support that people get from a broker. So from when you come in at first and you're trying to buy a policy, you're even trying to understand what you need, to trying to make a claim at the end. So how does the broker take you through the entire process? How do they support people?
The first thing is we listen to you. We need to understand you. We need to understand what you do, what your business is, even as an individual that is insuring a small home, no matter how big or large the risk is, the process is the same. So we listen to you to understand your business or your assets. From there, we would be able to understand the sort of risks that you are exposed to. Then we will advise you of the appropriate insurance to take. After that, once you have paid the premium, of course, we also explain all the legalities, the terms, the conditions, even before you pay. So we will explain to you how the insurance we have proposed will be useful for you. Based on all the facts that we have gathered. Then once you have paid the premium and the insurance is in place, we will give you a summary of the terms and conditions. So you have the scope, the terms, the limitations, the exclusions, what your obligations are. We will take you through that to understand. Then you can be at peace that your insurance is running. Of course, part of what we will educate you about is your obligations in the event of an incident. We usually tell our clients that whether the incident is covered or not, just make sure that you inform us as soon as possible if there is an incident, whether it is covered under the policy or not. Just let us know. Then we will step in and let you and try to understand the situation. And once we have ascertained that the loss is covered under the policy, then we will liaise with the insurer. We will be the go-between. You don't have to liaise directly with the insurer. So we liaise with the insurer, then we tell you or provide these documents. We help you review the documents. We help you in ensuring that the documents are properly prepared and presented to the insurer. Then even when during surveys, like a post-loss survey, there are two surveys, by the way. Sorry that I digress. So there is the pre-loss survey. So insurers come to inspect the property to be sure that the property is insurable. Okay. We are there. Then the post-loss survey, when there is already an incident that may be a subject of claim under the policy, we are also there. They inspect the policy after we have reported the loss. So they inspect the policy. Then they do what we call adjustment. Okay. So what that means is you would have some part of the document you will submit is what we call maybe an estimate of repair or invoice for a new parts or whatever you want to. It depends on, for replacement, it depends on the loss. If it's something that can be repaired or if it is something that has to be replaced. Once you present that, insurance company will appoint adjuster for the post-loss inspection. So the adjuster will look at your documents, we look at the situation, we look at what you have submitted, what you are claiming for, the amount you are claiming for, then adjust appropriately. There are instances where people overclaim. For instance, this place, maybe just this glass is broken. The insurance company's obligation is limited to this glass. But some people will say, no, I don't want the whole, the entire, glass. I don't want the entire thing again. Just change everything. No, that is not how it works. So that is part of what will be adjusted. The insurer will look at what you are claiming. They themselves will go to the market to check the prices just to confirm the prices. Yeah. Then they present you with an offer. So what happens is the offer comes to us. We are the go-between. So the offer comes to us. We check the offer to see if it is actually fair to you. So if the offer is not fair, we return it. So we do all of these works. We engage the insurer until a fair offer is provided. Then we send you the offer together with what we call discharge voucher you sign. Then you get paid. Even after that, insurance still continues. So we are still there for you. So we are there all the way from beginning to the end.
It sounds like you're an insurance bestie.
Of course, see us as your bestie. In fact, thank you. We are your bestie. It is our job to make sure that we are there. In fact, for us, even for us at Ark, we are we sort of distinguish ourselves from the crowd. There are so many insurance brokers, but there are just a few of us that we have kind of distinguished ourselves. For us, we have different teams. We have different teams, and each team does different things, but work together, just to ensure that the client has excellent, experience when it comes to service delivery. So we have our own claims team in-house. We have who we call the relationship management team. The relationship managers are you inside here. So they are your ears, they are your eyes. They can fight in court who they need to fight in order to make sure that you get the best treatment. Of course, we have the technical team. They are the ones that go to the insurance market to engage the insurers in order to get you the best deal available at the lowest possible price. Then we have the legal team, legal and compliance team. So aside from ensuring that we do everything in line with law, they also are there to help you in case you have legal liabilities of your own, like you are in contractual agreements with other parties. For instance, as the buyer or as the owner of the house, maybe your contractual obligations to your tenants, or as the owner, maybe you took facilities from some banks. So we do lenders advisory. So we have a whole team that what they do is legal compliance, lenders advisories, all of those legal things. Then we have the reinsurance department. They themselves help us to understand the sort of reinsurance that insurance companies have. Now, reinsurance is insurance of the insurance company.
Okay. I thought it was like when you come next year.
No. In fact, that is really interesting. You see, when an insurance company sells you an insurance policy, it does not end there most often, depending on the size of the policy. Because two things, insurance companies are by law, required to only retain certain amount of risks in their books. Okay. So the rest they must reinsure. And secondly, it gives them financial support as well, because we know that for insurance companies, their financial capacity is not unlimited, right? In order to be able to accept more risks, they need the support of other practitioners in the industries that we call reinsurance. In fact, reinsurance can also do reinsurance, which we call retrocession, but no, let us delve into that. You understand? So part of what actually, or part of the factors that determine the effectiveness of an insurance company is the kind of reinsurance they have. You understand? So we have a reinsurance department that helps insurance to buy the proper reinsurance policy, and also helps the technical unit to understand the sort of reinsurance behind each of the risks that we have placed for our clients. So we have risk analytics departments. Those ones, what they do is to analyze aside from they too, they are not part of the core reinsurance team, but part of their work involves analyzing the reinsurance that insurance companies have bought for specific large projects. You understand? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if an insurance takes up a risk that is much bigger than them, and there is a loss, let's say a total loss, which is very possible, they need to run to their reinsurance, to their reinsurers for support to be able to pay that claim. How good the reinsurance is will determine how effective the whole process is. So part of what they do is what I've explained. So for specific large projects, they do reinsurance analysis, for those projects. And they also analyze the financial capacity of each insurance company. So as I'm talking to you, we understand where each insurance company in Nigeria stands financially. So that even helps us to choose a good insurer for your risk. So, and of course, I mentioned our claims. So we have our own in-house claims team that helps you run through your claim. So this is not, we do not operate a structure where one person does everything and there could be mistakes along the line. So we have different teams that work together, collaboratively to ensure a great customer experience. So that is just part of what we do as an insurance group.
Thank you so much. It's been a very insightful conversation. And
my pleasure.
I hope that people watching have learned a lot about property insurance and they now know the next steps they need to take when it comes to getting a policy and also ensuring that they're able to get their claims.